First of all, we are honored having you here, Martin.
Yeah.
Perfect. Enterprise search, how relevant is relevance?
Okay. Are we ready then?
We are.
Good. Right. My name's Martin White. I both try and run a one-man company, and I'm a visiting prof up at the University of Sheffield. I started out as a chemist. I then became an information scientist, and for Anna's benefit, I'm also an organist. I started in search in 1975. That's not a misprint. When you used acoustic couplers dial up to telephone lines at 33 bits per second. My entry into enterprise search was really in the early 1980s when I worked with Unilever to build a mini computer enterprise search application. And in 1999, I set up Intranet Focus, and I've written 4 out of the 5 books on enterprise search, which is just insane. But I'll let you click and have a look at some of the reports. So for those of you who remember what an aircraft looked like inside, please fasten your seatbelt. This could be a bumpy ride. There are at least 6 categories of search, and we tend just to talk about search and retrieval. But actually, I think it's helpful to start categorizing them. And these are a bit vague, but you've got the Google, the World Wide Web search, where you have curation of content to improve findability by those nice people called search enhancement officers or whatever they call. And of course, everyone wants their enterprise search to be like Google. Well, if you give me $20 billion, I can make your enterprise search look like Google. Then there's website, intranet search, again, highly curated content where search is being set off against a browse information seeking mode. You've got repository search. I'm not too keen on the name, but it's basically where you've got a library or an archive management system, highly curated content. All the books have got ISBNs, full stop. And their precision is very important. And we've just heard about e-commerce search, where again, the content is highly curated. Only the products sold by that company will be on the website. And as we've just been hearing, you can probably do a return on investment based on sales. And then we come to enterprise search. Massive amounts of both structured and unstructured content, little of it curated, and most people in the world think Microsoft 365 search is about as good as it gets. I won't talk about Microsoft 365 search. You've often got multiple applications, multiple content languages being used by people with a range of different language skills. Crucially, they are security trimmed, and that plays havoc with relevance. Because it could be that every document relating to a particular project is trimmed to the people who were on the project. And if you weren't on the project, you don't see it. Just to jump down to a few others, search is additive. Enterprise search users do not come from a zero knowledge base, and that's important. And the final one makes me mad. There's no training or mentoring. Search is intuitive. I'll come back to another category, professional search, shortly. I'm going to put the screen up and you can go off and click these 2 links because they basically talk about the way that enterprise search can fail. And it's very difficult to understand the failure modes. And a lot of it's related to content quality. The content's not been indexed, the metadata is not consistent. So please go away and read these 2. They're both open source, open access, because it will tell you a lot about what I, as an enterprise search consultant, have to deal with. Classic evaluation assumptions for IR and interactive retrieval. You have test collections, you have carefully controlled user cohorts, often students. You rightly try to control as many of the variables as possible. And then you come down to, do you assess the relevance on perhaps an item title and a snippet? But by and large, there's not an assessment of content quality. No, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm saying this is classic IR, and it works very well under certain circumstances. But this is what happens inside an enterprise. Now, this is a global law firm, and they do a survey every couple of years asking about what applications their lawyers use. So they'll use an intranet, which has a search application. They use document management applications, which have search embedded. You use electronic research services like Nexus, which also have search inside. Then we come to library staff, and knowledge databases will also have a search application inside. And library books will be on a library management system, and that has a search application. And then you come to enterprise search. Internal specialists' expertise, electronic closing binders are the results of all the cases that the firm has done. What I'm showing here is there are multiple search applications inside an enterprise, of which enterprise-wide search is one, but most people have no idea what the edges are of enterprise search. And often it's the backup. If all else fails, well, I'll have a look at enterprise search. And then you've got the language issue. Now, this is a real company. It's a very large German company. And you'll see that 73% of the content items are in English, but only 24% of the people speak the language as their primary language. That's very important because people may be able to speak good English. The question is, can they construct a query in good English? And can they understand the snippets in good English? And managing this melange, this language, happens in any company that wants to work outside of the UK. And I say that because American English causes very similar problems. So you'll not be surprised to find that users are very dissatisfied with their internal search. If you look at the right-hand one, which is the easiest one to read, 10% are very dissatisfied and 30% are dissatisfied. This is across 250 companies and organizations, mainly in Scandinavia. If you look at the left-hand side and ignore the mature ones, because those are the people with this enterprise search team, you'll find that, again, 15% are very dissatisfied, over 35% are pretty fed up with it. You have a situation where enterprise search is underperforming. And the reasons for that I'll come to shortly. This is a crucially important paper. It was published in 2012, and it should be essential reading for anyone who is looking at enterprise search, because it's probably the first paper that looks at search tasks rather than find a document. This is important because search users inside the enterprise want to complete a task or make a decision. They are looking for information for the sake of looking for information. The first thing is that Professor Borland, who is now at the University of Oslo, and her team, looked at a collection. They developed a collection of work task scenarios. Ordinary, and I love the next one, unordinary administrative tasks, and then everyday professional tasks, and then unordinary professional tasks. Now, whether those are good categories, I'm not going to comment on. The point is that she had clearly identified that people were doing different types of tasks as part of search. And this from the same paper. There remains a need for IIR research and information searching in relation to information-intensive work task performance to understand basically what the work tasks are. And that's the reference. And I do suggest that you click on the video, because it's Pierre Borland talking about the mess that the information retrieval community get into when they're talking about tasks. Very interesting. In the enterprise, people are foraging for information. And if you haven't read Piroli and Card's paper on information foraging, please do. You'll notice it's published in Psychological Review. This goes to the heart of how the brain is interacting with, in this case, information. And they develop these concepts of the information patch and information scent and information diet. The point about it is that when enterprise users are searching, they evaluate relevance from a whole range of heuristics. Is it a language that I can cope with? Oh, I like that because this is from a guy I know in Germany. Yeah, I'll read that. So they have very complex ways of deciding what is relevant. And this is just a superb model that's been developed, largely by David Maxwell and Leif Azzopardi up in Glasgow, about what they've called the complex searcher model. And one of the things that this talks to me about is that people look at, enterprise searchers look at the totality of the search page. They don't go click 1, click 2, click 3, click 4, because they're trying to get a sense of, am I going in the right direction? So it's well worth reading. I've done a link down there, but I'll come back right at the end to the thesis written by David Maxwell, which is absolutely superb in dealing with these complex searches. And one of the things he's talking about is stopping strategies. Where's the stopping point? It's a balance between, am I likely to get more success, but it's going to take me more effort? That's not necessarily in terms of time, but in terms of I've got to rebuild the query, I may have to look at things. And on the right-hand side, classic examples of when people say, I can't trust the search application. Or I'll give someone a call, he'll know the answer. So there are all sorts of reasons why people stop searching. It's not because they've found what they're looking for. It's probably because they've given up not being able to find what they're looking for. So stopping strategies are very important to understand. Professional search. If Tony's on this call, this is my homage to Tony, John, and Leif. Professional search are undertaken by people in companies who really do need to find a lot of relevant information. Legal, healthcare, patent agents, recruitment agents. And in this brilliant study, they looked at how people use the various elements of a search functionality, like Boolean logic, proximity educators, relevance ranking, truncation. I picked out 3 here to show the difference between legal and healthcare. So in healthcare, you really do need to find everything. Patients could die. So you use complex Boolean, a bit less in legal, but go down to abbreviations and synonyms. What you'll find in healthcare is that synonyms are very important because basically you have the 2 languages. You have the clinical language, which calls it renal, and you have the nursing public language, which calls it kidney. So you're dealing constantly with synonyms and abbreviations. Is it coronavirus? Is it COVID-19? Is it COVID-19? Is it horrendous? When you go to legal, you'll notice that abbreviations, people don't use them as much. So you've got here a sense of how even these professional searchers have very different ways of doing searches and of what they're looking for. And the link there is to an open access version of the paper. Very important, but more importantly, follow what's going on in professional search because it's at the leading edge of what I would call enterprise search. Click logs. Every time I walk into a new client, I say, show me your click logs. So here's a typical click log. It's very simple. It's query count against query rank, and the curve will always be like that. Now, if you look at the query terms on the left-hand side, they are all applications. And indeed, if you look at ones on the right-hand side, by the time you get to 100, they are still applications. If you look at the one that's most frequently searched, it's ESS, which is employee self-service, which is a link on the intranet site, but no one can be bothered to go to the intranet and click it. They just sit there and do a search for ESS. So if you see, all those are applications. They are the most highly queried content in any enterprise environment. Let's have an, oh, the tail is long. It goes on forever. Now, this is from another client. I've taken a couple out, but I want to look at some of the idiosyncrasies here. First of all, almost all of these query terms you'll see have different spellings or different capital letters. And you may be saying, oh, but that shouldn't happen. No, it shouldn't, but they don't have a search team to sort it out. If you go to the second term, Concor, this is an application. It's the application to manage expenses. If you put expenses in, you don't find it. If you put Concor in, you do. And what I just want to show you here is that you're having query numbers, query rankings, which can be significantly different. If your eye goes down to Workday, you'll see that the most common one is at rank 2. But the one with the capital W is rank 57. So if you're going to analyze click logs, you have to do this integration of different query terms. And these are only the queries. You'll find that when people hunt for IT, there's always something after it, because they know a particular little trick to get them to the right bit in IT. And there's a story on the left-hand side. One of the high-ranked terms was Tracy, which is a woman's name. And I said, who's Tracy? And it transpired she was the manager of the help desk about 3 years previously. But if you do IT and Tracy, you always end up at the local help desk. So you have to look at these click logs and relevance rankings, query rankings, very carefully indeed. So what I would like to propose, there are really 3 key use cases. Use case A, very high query numbers, quick route to applications, people. What's the office address for Munich? Oh, I just heard that we've got a new vaccine for COVID. Where can I find that? When I say clever single query terms, they're often 2 words, and the second word is off this planet. They just know that if they put that funny little query in, like Tracy, they will get to the IT help desk. Use case B is when we're getting into corporate policies, finding divisional news archives because no one can find them on an intranet. A lot of stuff about products, initiatives, all that stuff. And the key thing here is people want to search by date range, and they want to search by alphanumeric terms. So you get into the problems of disambiguating product codes, standards, all that sort of stuff. That's difficult territory. And case C is the topic-related searches, and the people doing this usually would know exactly what they're looking for, because these are particular technologies, particular products, and often they're very periodic. So at the end of the year, you'll suddenly find people looking for expense claims and things like this. They need to get it. And if you look at the numbers on the left-hand side, the top 100 searches account for, in 1 month, 1.5 million queries. The next 400, and you only get to 1.3 million. And what I want to put on is that box, because that is the interesting one to look at, because it's where the inflection of that curve comes. And you want to watch carefully to see whether the C queries are starting to get into the B and vice versa. But the A ones will be the same for months, if not years, because they're fundamental enterprise applications. So this brings me back to my title of the talk, how relevant is relevance? Firstly, search users do not click through each result in sequence because they will jump, they will redo the query because they realize in the wrong place. And from a search technology perspective, it's very difficult to ascertain intent. I am very skeptical about semantic indexing and semantic queries because we all have multiple roles, use cases, no one knows how much they know already. So trying to guess what someone might want is, I think, an impossible challenge. For example, it might well be that the search was to find someone in the body they can go and talk to. It might not have been a relevant document, but it sparks off by someone, he'll know something, I'll give him a call. Next one is the most important one for this question. The users may stop, let's say the very relevant document is at position 3. They will not click on it because they already have it. So if you look at clicks, you can be very misled. The presence of the document at 3 is a reassurance because they're saying, yes, that's the annual review on that subject from last year. Okay, so the query is probably a fairly good one. But do not assume that users will click on all the relevant documents. So overall, that makes it extremely difficult to work out what set of heuristics each user is using to employ. And remember, enterprise search is used probably by more people than any other enterprise application. How do you evaluate enterprise search? So here are 10 suggestions. Click logs have a value, but what I ask my clients to do is for every search term, ask why. So why, if you remember back to the click logs, you saw Box was highly popular. Why? Because the company had introduced Box as an archive application, but they hadn't put a connection to Box on the intranet. Because the intranet was owned by corporate comms and Box was owned by IT, so there was a link on the IT pages, but no one could find it. So the solution here is, why don't you put Box on the top page of the intranet rather than have people do 135,000 queries a month trying to find it? And there was a comment just now about dwell time, and there's been a lot of discussion about the time people spend searching. I like to think about a concept of time well spent, and this goes back to professional search. It may take them 2 days to do the search, but they are using a powerful search engine. It's well designed, the content is well organized, and so even if they take 2 days, it's time well spent. The new kid on the block is computational ethnography. And what this is doing is basically tracking the keyboard hits. So you can start to see how long people are using on particular applications, what query terms they're using, where in the process of writing a report they may be doing a search. There are some pretty big ethical problems around that, but it's starting to be used quite successfully. Usability testing has to be constant around tasks and task completion. So if you do a search for expenses, do you actually get something that's helping you complete the task? I also recommend that the search team constantly do high hit and low zero hit searches. This means there has to be a search team, which is rare. But you have to do them because all of a sudden you may find, hey, that's a very funny query result I'm getting. Why is that? I advocate search mentors, particularly in project teams. Every project team should have a certified enterprise search person on the team. That doesn't mean to say they do nothing else but search, but they understand how search works. When I say clever surveys, I mean do not survey the entire company at one go and ask what they think about search. I did that at the IMF in 2001. 62% of the people said search sucks. So clever surveys targeted at particular teams, targeted at people who may be doing particular queries. Ask them to tell you stories about how search was successful for you or not. And a couple of companies I've been working with do spot checks. They tell people in a particular department over the course of a week, they're going to get an email or a call just to find out how the search went. And finally, which is a little plug for me, you can use a heuristic benchmarking approach, which I've done, which enables you basically to score how well individual elements of a search are going. So in summary, in the enterprise, it's about information foraging, where there's a whole range of factors that people may take into account. Relevance is still very relevant. I'm not for 1 minute saying you shouldn't concentrate on getting stuff at the right level within a query. But you have to think about what the use case is, where they're using search, and remembering that you may never prove that it's relevant because no one's clicked on it. This is when it comes back to talking to people about their expectations. I then want to move on to the next one, which is snippet quality. It's always ignored, but that snippet is crucial in enterprise search because people want to get a sense of what was the date, who wrote it, what department they were in, how big is it, is it a presentation but it comes up as a PDF. There are all sorts of things about snippet quality which are very important to look at. Security trimming is colossally important when you're trying to do test collections. Don't do test collections, please. But you can never be sure that the people who say they can't find it because they're not allowed to see it. And you absolutely have to have a multidisciplinary search team. And if you've got, in a multinational company, if you haven't got a team of, say, 5 to 8 people, you are never going to get search working because you've got to do all this stuff all the time, and you have to know the business you are in. So it's time for reflection. And there's a lady at the bottom of that picture, who's my wife, Cynthia, who was saying, if he stands around taking pictures he can use in his wretched presentations, I just give up. So anyhow, I'm very happy to deal with any questions, or my email address is on the front. Do please ping me. And on the slide set, there's a whole range of stuff you may want to look at, including that thesis from David Maxwell. It's 360 pages. You want to read every page and mark it up. It is quite brilliant. So, Sandro, back to you.
Thank you very much, Martin. So for the session before, we're going to read any question. So the first one is from Mia. So Mia, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
My question is, how do you find relevant results across different types of content that might have different structures, different metadata structures, and different relevant signals? That's the point of enterprise search, is that you're searching across all of these different verticals and providing results that are the most relevant to a person's query.
Because the only way you can do it is build up a whole set of personas and use cases. You have to understand that manufacturing in Germany has different problems to manufacturing in the UK and in the US. And then you have to look at those query logs and work out where they're coming from and saying, I expect that because in Germany they're using this type of technology and they're having some problems with it. So it comes back to really understanding tasks, search user cases, and effectively building a solution that meets the requirements of a manageable group of people, rather than trying to say, we got 72,000 people. Yeah, well, we can get the most precise, the corporate policy at #1. You will never do it. That language check I showed you of the different languages, that company has 125 million documents that are being searched. So you can imagine the problems of getting to precision 1. Sorry, it's not a very good answer, but it's reality.
Thanks.
So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to write in the chat.
As I say, I offer a lifetime guarantee on my presentation, Alexandra, so they're very welcome to contact me by the email that's on the page, and I'll give them a prompt response.
Okay, then I would say if anyone has any other question related to information retrieval that want to express, let's open the Q&A session and we will try to answer. So as usual, if anybody has any question, just write it there. Any other funny experience? I mean, every time we work on these topics is because we like it, so it's funny for us.
Yeah, I've got one to throw into there. Going back to my client with the Tower of Babel, they suddenly found that when people were searching the Intranet, all the top results were in Chinese, and it drove everyone mad. So why, when most of the content was English, did every search on the Intranet come up with Chinese language? And that's because in Shanghai, they hired a librarian who went through all the top content and added English metadata terms to. And it was so rich in metadata, the search engine said, oh, goody, goody, that must be very good content, and just presented it in Chinese. You've got to be very careful in enterprise search.
So from our side, probably we have some fun experience with search quality evaluations of our learning to rank models. So we presented some of these in the offline mistakes. So it happened to me that we got like customers super happy of their model, saying like, oh, the first model I trained has like an offline amazing results for NDCG at 10, for example. And we realized that the reason for that was the mistake #1 we mentioned. So out of, it was like 2,000 or something query IDs, like most of them, more than half of them, were single sampled one. So when calculating the mean of the normalized discount cumulative gain, it was basically like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, a lot of 1, and averaged with very few query IDs with a real NDCG. So the final score offline for that model was really, really high, but it was not reflecting at all any real quality of that model. So yeah, I mean, it was not that funny, but anyway, it was like useful to discover that. And a second thing for online evaluation, and actually this was something that happened in the past as well. So in different companies I was working on, where basically the evaluation of the learning to rank model online was just basically counting sales, but the model was trying to optimize a different thing. So it's very indirect, the relation between, for example, which we were trying to optimize and sales. Your sales can happen for any other, I mean, many other reasons on top of, for example, increasing clicks. So also in that case, it's always useful to try to assess, yeah, to get the same and not be super happy. I mean, in that case, it was like a lot of sales, super happy of that, but maybe the correlation was not that. I mean, it was, of course, we were happy, but I wouldn't trust that because the model was trying to optimize something else. So it was potentially like completely other reasons. So we have from Avi, I once had a customer. Avi, do you want to elaborate? Do you?
Sure, I'll say it. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So this was a customer where they had not had a search team on their intranet, and I was recruited partly at another point because the CEO couldn't find the company store because the intranet only had search for the intranet, and the company store was a different application. As usual, Martin has it pinned. Anyway, so I was looking at other things. First thing I looked at the click log, there's FedEx. Everybody's searching for FedEx. It's a boring search. It's a known item search. Why is it happening so much? And then it turned out that they had forms for FedEx, but the forms were inside the forms page on the 6th link, which was other forms, right? Everything else was at least labeled. So nobody could find it. Nobody could remember. It was an annoying experience. And when I talked to the intranet manager, we put that on the front page and made the forms page significantly better. And search usage went significantly down. But this is a case where the point being that people are finding what they want. So in the big picture, it's a better experience, and just the use of the search engine is not the goal.
Thanks. So any other question? If not, we're going to wrap up at 8:15. And we're going to also, anyway, in the meantime, we're going to upload the slides, make them available in the user group in the meetup.com. We're going to tweet about it. And we are going also to share them in the chat, but most of the people, I mean, there are some people that left already, so it probably would be better to just put them in the group, the user group in meetup.com, and they're going to be accessible there.
Okay, well, thank you for the invitation to give a presentation at this superb meetup organization. So thank you to CESE for investing their time and effort into making a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And thank you as well. And of course, thanks everyone for their participation. It's been our pleasure to host this meetup. And we are going to do it on site as soon as possible, probably will be after summer, I suspect. And we're going to stream it as well. And anyway, the location we have, we are going to be able to also like make possible to potentially make the presentation remotely, and then for the audience which is on site, of course, it's going to be, you know, like pizza as well. So thank you. So thank you very much, and have a nice evening, afternoon, depending on your time zone, or night. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you next time.